That's always such a relief when I hear that voice. Good morning, everyone, online and in the Gompa. Lovely to see everybody here. We'll start with the verses for refuge and bodhicitta. Those who have the book that we have here, it's on page 14. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So here, setting a motivation in that vein of engaging in listening, reflecting, meditating, cultivating these wisdoms, these minds, in order to benefit ourselves, in order to benefit others, in order eventually to become a Buddha ourselves. The most profound Mahayana motivation for engaging in this time together, discussion, reflection, listening, and so forth. Here. Okay, so thanks, Brian. I've got a message here from Susan, who looks after all the materials for us for Discovering Buddhism. So you will have noticed in the readings for today or this week, reference to a section of the wish-fulfilling golden son of Mahayana thought training. So all of the modules refer to this. It's a bit of a big chunky thing, but they refer to different pages. And those of you who've downloaded it onto your device will see that the page reference numbers don't match this document. So we've got a hard copy of it, one hard copy to use as reference. And I'm trying to get from somebody who put it together, hopefully electronically, at another centre. One of the students put together the actual correct page reference for this version and that version so that people don't get too confused. But it's the part about meditation anyway. So, yeah, so you can use this as reference. You can take a copy if you want, but we leave this copy here because it's the only physical copy I think we have. So just letting you know that. Okay. Alrighty, so here we are. Analytical meditation, developing penetrative insight. So previously, like last time, we were looking at, the cultivation of single-pointed concentration, calm abiding, stilling the mind, bringing it laser-like focused attention. And we have looked at different meditations previously for enhancing the positive aspects of the mind through, looking at our natural, wholesome, beneficial qualities of mind. And we also have within the Buddha's teachings the principle of cultivating antidotes for the non-beneficial, the destructive states of mind, counteracting our afflictions. So when we looked at the first module, we looked at all this list of, the root afflictions and secondary afflictions. And we don't have to go one by one by one. That's the good news. But we can see how important destructive emotions, the power of that in the world, and the fact that the first conference, the first Mind and Life conference, the dialogues of the Dalai Lama with people like Daniel Goleman and Paul Ekman, Eve Ekman, she was quite young then, and Alan Wallace and so forth. I mention those because they developed a program out of this first Mind and Life conference, looking at these, and that, you know, that was the very first dialogue that the Dalai Lama wanted to have. So you can see that urgency, that need for that. I mean, we can see that in the world manifesting all the time, the power of those minds. We can see maybe in our own mind the power of those minds that we don't want to have. So in this one today, we're looking at developing what's called penetrative insight, or that laser-like, sharp, you know, wisdom insight, which Vipassana, you might be used to that term from Pali or Sanskrit. So it leads to this development of wisdom of analysis, wisdom through investigation, through using the power of the mind, the thinking power of the mind, the cognitive skills of the mind, using logic, using reasoning, and so forth. And sort of, yeah. So instead of staying in this, you know, box of continually strengthening the positive qualities, of course we want to do that. And we talked about last week, even by bringing the mind to a state of calmness, there is a pacification, some level of pacification of these disturbing states of mind, but it's not permanent, it's temporary. And so how we use a more powerful mind, completely out of the box, look at things differently, develop different perspectives, you know, to cut them by the root eventually. And, you know, developing a totally different world perspective. So that's the idea. So in the diagram we had previously of the 9 stages of meditation, I'm not going to refer to this very much, but I'm just going to say that, you know, we got up to the flying monk with pliancy and bliss and, you know, physical and mental bliss and buoyancy and so forth. But if we continue on here, so here we've got now on the very focused, concentrated, stable mind. We have, you know, that's overcome laxity and dullness and so forth. We have a monk, the meditator is now on the elephant, and then there's a big fire again. So this fire, as we mentioned previously, represents effort. The effort that we need again for this penetrative wisdom is massive, it's huge, because we're cutting through all our habitual ways of thinking, all our, you know, opinions that get us into trouble and so forth and so forth. So it needs this huge, powerful mind to develop this, a lot of effort to develop this insight, you know, and we do it obviously like everything else in stages. And the meditators holding these two, it looks like multicolored ribbons in this one. And that's representing the obscurations of the mind. So one represents all of the afflictions, or the sort of manifest afflictions, or, you know, anger and revenge and jealousies and prides and all of those sort of levels of affliction. And then the other one represents the imprints of that on our mental continuum that still we've refined, you know, we've got them under control, but they're still got a, you know, a vestige or imprint on our mental continuum. That's enough to say for now. And then there's another, you know, these two are face to face, these two meditators, which is the one of calm abiding, single point of concentration, and the wisdom one eventually conjoin. So that's, you know, the end of the road. That's a very long road. So it's got the two paths there, the two paths of calm abiding and special insight, and then they conjoin eventually into the one mind. So that comes there. And all these clouds we didn't mention along the way are all different obscurations, all different afflictions and so forth that we overcome. So I think that's as much as unpacked everything in the diagram. So, yeah. So using analytical meditation, the power of the mind to think, and it brings into play all our creative thinking, all our intellectual thinking based on what we've studied, what we've learned. And it's absolutely crucial. It's the only way we can develop insight. We can't develop insight through merely single-pointed concentration, because that's to make the mind, as we said, serviceable to then engage in more. It doesn't mean you have to achieve shamatha before you do analytical meditation. We do a lot of analytical meditation already here. So, but to develop real insight, we have to have a conceptual understanding. That's where we start, with our conceptual mind of applying logic, applying reasoning, how things are. But for us to get that logic and reasoning, we have to know what logic and reasoning we're applying. So we have to, you know, study and learn all the different points of what to look at. So over time, you know, we analyze, investigate from all different perspectives, look at things from different views, up and down and side by side, and all different scenarios, all different situations, and all our doubts. And we look at all our doubts, our confusion and so forth. Eventually, as it shows in that diagram, we combine that with that stabilizing meditation, that powerful mind. And that's when we have some direct and intuitive knowing. But we can have those sort of aha moments already, you know, as you know, when the penny drops, or whatever analogy we want to use. And when we do that, we just let our mind rest there, and you know, try and get a experiential sense of that, and that, you know, sort of lays another imprint on our mental continuum that we might then forget about as soon as we stand up from meditation. But it's in there somewhere, you know, when you have that amazing thought, you go, oh, that's great. And then you go, oh, I've forgotten what it was, but gee, it was fantastic. So eventually, over and over again, practice, it becomes more solid, I guess, in a way. We can, a solid conviction. But before developing these insight into the right minds, we have to, first of all, investigate how we're getting things wrong in the first place. What is it that I need to investigate? So we look at, you know, all the complexities of our different attitudes, all our convoluted ideas. I always like to say, why make things simple when you can make them complicated? I mean, that's how I feel like my mind works. And when you go and talk to, you know, your teacher and say, oh, can you help me, blah, 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 blah. And they just say one or two words. It's so simple, and it just sort of cuts through all that convolution. So in that diagram where we have the fire and the meditators holding the sword of wisdom. So this is like Manjushri here. We have the tanka here of Manjushri, holding the sword of wisdom. So Manjushri represents wisdom. So the wisdom that is, you know, cutting through all these wrong views that we have, all these convoluted ideas, all these mistaken behaviors and so forth. So we gradually, we can eliminate those thoughts or see where they're erroneous, and see how they cause us unhappiness rather than happiness for ourselves and for others. And, you know, in that way, our minds can develop more and more happiness, more and more peace, because we're more in sync with reality. So the main ways that the Buddha talked about how we get things wrong all the time is that seeing what is impermanent, what is constantly subject to change, as permanent. Now we get this at a very manifest level. We know about change all the time. We see changes in the weather, we see changes in the COVID rules, and we see change all the time. Aging, all of this sort of thing. But what we don't get is the most subtle level of change. The good news is about that is the mind, moment by moment, subject to change, which means we can change, you know. So we want to use that capacity of the mind to change, to introduce all these new ideas, to transform it more in sync with reality. And we can only do that through analytical meditation. So that's one thing. We see what is actually suffering we regard as happiness, you know. I was thinking about how, you know, people get in a new relationship and, you know, it's all going, you know, fantastically well, and this is the answer to my dreams and so forth. This person, and they stop seeing their therapist or whatever because they don't need them anymore because now they're blissfully happy for a while. And then, you know, oh, got to go back to the therapist now. Because now I want to break up from them, or now there's problems, so now I'm not happy. But, you know, we're always seeking for that happiness out there. And of course, as the Buddha said, you won't ever find anything other than temporary happiness. So we think on the basis of our senses and the feel-good feelings that happiness is going to come, whereas in fact, it's a state of mind. So that we get that wrong. We see what's impure as pure, and the classic example that is used is on the basis of the body, either our own or someone else's, and we see it as, you know, being beautiful and so forth. And then when you do a meditation on the body and all the bits and pieces and what exists inside, you know, the blood and organs and pus and urine, and, you know, you go through it all. You say, maybe it's not what I thought it was. When you skin deep. And then the main one, of course, especially for developing penetrative insight, is this story we tell about ourselves, our persona, our idea of ourselves as being continuous, ongoing. And, you know, I always just hold my hand here, this sense of me, you know, you hurt me, or I love you, or whatever. We feel that there's this sense of me here or wherever we want to point to. That is ongoing, that is permanent, that is, you know, the core essence of me. And the Buddha said, we've got it all totally wrong. So these are the classical ways that we investigate, some of the classical ways that we investigate, looking at that. But we can also meditate, for example, on karma, you know, the reality of the law of cause and effect, that what my present experience is a result of those imprints of my mind that I've laid from past lives that are now ripening in this moment as my experience. And again, we look for the cause being out there. We'll elaborate more on that when we get to the karma module, but, you know, that's another part. So we have the whole of the graduated path to enlightenment, the Lam Rim, the stages on the path to enlightenment, which is indeed, you know, the next module is presenting an overview of that, and then we go through each of those, you know, the meditation topics, analytical meditation for all of those, so that we learn the points to reflect on death, on karma, and so forth, that we go on with that. We can also meditate point by point in analytical meditation on something like the benefits of patience. And then when you get to, you know, the investigating the 6 perfections, which is the great scope, which is, you know, the progression on these sort of 3 levels of the path, there you investigate, you know, the power of patience and the points to consider about developing patience. So it's a very sort of structured, orderly analysis based on logic. So you can see how we first need to study about that, listen to the teachings, know what it is that we're analyzing, and know, you know, how to analyze. So in one sense that we can say that an analytical meditation is itself a study session. However, the mind that you're engaging, the cognitive skills you're bringing to that, the conceptual thoughts that you're applying in that, is at a much more subtle level than when we're engaging like this and listening and reflecting and discussing and so forth. So therefore, it's a more powerful mind. So therefore, it's going to sink more and more, create, eventually create the causes to have that profound insight, and so, and it becomes more and more subtle, more and more potent the more we engage with it. Those of you who've been meditating even on one topic for a long time may have already discovered that in your practice, that, through that, you've got more levels of understanding. For example, you take a topic like impermanence, and you meditate every day on impermanence and different, different points and different levels of impermanence and so forth, day after day, and you get different perspectives, you get different thoughts arising or different experiences arising. And so it enriches your understanding. So if you do that for months and years, you're going to have deeper and deeper appreciation, understanding, and that way loosening our grip on, I want everything to stay the same, I can't tolerate change, it's too overwhelming. And so our minds become more fluid, more flexible, more open, more spacious, as a result. And in terms of the Lamrim topics, step by step by step, this is where Lama Zopa Rinpoche has said that, we need everybody to have Lamrim realizations, because without that, well, he said us Westerners, that if you haven't met John, our previous director, because previously long lineage in this place. So, as Rinpoche said, it's up to those of us in the West, as he said, to have these realizations, because all the great yogis of the past, the Tibetan lamas, the Indian lamas, and so forth, are passing away. We can't rely on them to be having the realizations and just rely on them to be guiding us forever. Of course, we can rely on our teachers, of course, and that we need to have the realizations for the Dharma to survive in the world. And that's a pretty big gig. To do that, to have the realizations, involves retreat. And Rinpoche has said that he would support people who wanted to go into retreat to achieve shamatha, so achieve that, meditative concentration. Because how this topic is presented in the Lamrim, it's presented at the end as, well, once you've achieved that and you've done all that study, now adopt this penetrative insight. Now apply yourself with this laser light, and then alternating until such point as you can join these two minds. And that's what Rinpoche said, we need shamatha and Lamrim realizations for the Dharma to survive in the world. And that Rinpoche said he will support anyone who wants to do that, who wants to go into lifelong retreat to achieve all of that. Even you say, yeah, well, I'm not going to do lifelong retreat. If you ever get the ability, like we have the, for discovering Buddhism, like we have the 2 weeks Lamrim retreat that they run at Chenrezig Institute in January, and Daytong Ling in South Australia, a little bit closer. I'm not sure if people have been there, or Kopan when it opens up again for their month-long retreat. But so, and then it's like deep immersion for at least a period of time. You've got some deep immersion in that, but then being able to develop as a daily practice is probably what most of us are more likely to be able to achieve, Okay. And also, analytical meditation can be used for self-therapy, if you like. Lama Yeshe, with becoming your own therapist, said indeed, become like the Buddha, who was the ultimate psychologist therapist. So Lama Yeshe said, each of us should know our own mind. You should become your own psychologist, right? So when we become emotionally upset, and we can sit down, we can calm our mind for a few moments, we can focus on the breath and get our mind to a state of calmness, settle into meditation, and then investigate that upset mind. And this indeed was the crux of that training program that came out of that first Mind and Life conference, the Cultivating Emotional Balance teacher training, or Cultivating Emotional Balance program, which maybe some of you have done here, I'm not sure. With Kirsty, or would like to, yes, we keep talking about it. So where one aspect of that is looking at, say, something like anger, and how do I know I'm angry? Not while you're angry, right? When you've calmed down, but being able to investigate the physical sensations, the thoughts that come along, the emotions that come along, and so forth, familiarize with, aha, how quickly can I shine the light of awareness on that before it manifests, and being able to deal with that. So we become our own therapists. What's going on? What kind of thoughts are going through my mind? What emotions? And so in a clear space, a calm space of meditation, we're more likely able to develop that awareness of what is going on, and shine that light of awareness on that. And then bringing it more in line with what we've developed, what we've learned in relation to spiritual practice, in relation to the Buddha's teachings, in relation to beneficial ideas and so forth. So there's many, many different applications. So we can harness this power of the mind, our power of thinking, analysis, investigation, to absolutely any topic that we want to, right? And we go over again and again and again and again this training. Okay. So this is where we're heading. So in the Theravadan tradition, Vipassana meditation is linked often to the cultivation of the 4 close applications of mindfulness. And we looked at that previously when we're looking at mindfulness of the body or the breath, body of the breath, interpreted differently, of feelings, sensations, of the mind itself. And that's what we've been talking about here, getting to more and more subtle levels of understanding, and then everything else that exists, all of phenomena. And then within the Tibetan tradition, this insight is developed, through using reasoning, using analysis, drawing on our study, our life experience, as we've been talking about. And so it's not just an intellectual exercise. It can stay just an intellectual exercise, but that we can join it with our reflection, like head and heart, with our emotions, our reflection, our head and our heart, if you like, can join together in meditation. And thinking, remembering, imagining, reasoning, logic. So, so I wanted to guide us through a meditation and then have some discussion. So this is a classic meditation analysis of the 6 elements. So it's in your notes. You don't need it right now because I'll guide you through it, but just to know it's there. So looking at, in one perspective, the elements, the components that make up the self. And we can look at this in so many different ways. Again, we'll look at this more in depth when we get to the much later, the module on emptiness, which is a whole bigger topic. But just right here we can just investigate through one method, inquiring, what makes up this body, this mind, where are the boundaries between myself and what's not me? So we just sort of keep an open mind, keep a spacious mind in the spirit of investigation, like a scientific observer in the lab of our experience. And we just see, if we were to do this meditation again and again, just like one on impermanence, if we were to do it in relation to this, different insights are going to come at different times, different experiences, and so forth. So this is looking at the elements. Now, I must say for myself, the first time I ever experienced any sense of different self of my experience was actually my theatre training. And I was at a physical theatre school in Paris. And we weren't meditating. So it wasn't meditation. But was it? Was it? So part of our training, because it was about physical theatre, about embodying all these different states. And so we looked at things like colour and how you express colour with the body, or how you express lightness or heaviness, or different animals, different rhythms, quick, slow. And your experience of your body changes completely just by being open to. We probably never thought before about changing the experience of our body, right? Getting a sense of, let alone getting a realistic sense of the body, which I also, first investigated through Feldenkrais training, and trying to get a sense of the right proportions of the body, rather than, do I have actually this came through the physical theatre training, people who are more led by the head, and we do all this, exaggerated thing of someone who's really intellectual or academic, their head's right out here, different ways, different looking at different postures and so forth. It was a fun way of doing it. So I hope you enjoy this fun way of doing it in meditation, just exploration. So, all right, so we'll go through that. Now, before I do, I just want to read the quote from the Precious Garland from Nagarjuna in relation to this. So, in Tibetan medicine, you'll see it's all based on the elements and so forth. So a person is not earth. We use that when we're grounding ourselves in meditation, connecting the earth element with the ground below. A person is not earth, not water, not fire, not wind. We also use that predominantly, the motility of the breath, which is the nature of wind or air. Not space, not consciousness, and not all of them, but what person is there other than these? So, in other words, we make it made up of all these composites, right? So this is one set of composites. We can look at it in many different angles, as we're invited to do. All right, so first of all, we're going to do some meditation. So sit in a conducive posture, stable, comfortable. And then take a few moments to settle into your meditation posture, the space of your body, focusing on the breath, just watching the sensations of the breath lightly, gently, to bring your body and mind together. So, as we've been discussing, in analytical meditation, we use thinking, reflecting, our analytical ability to investigate the chosen topic. imagining, feeling, but our attention stays on the topic. It doesn't go randomly wherever we want. So we harnessing the ability to think, to focus that energy on one topic. And so anytime you get distracted, just relax, release whatever distraction, refresh your attention. And I'm guiding you anyway, so you just come back to it. So first of all, we begin with getting a sense of the earth element of our body, everything that's solid, stable. To get a sense of this solidity, the weight of your body sitting here, and that groundedness to the earth below. Get a sense of the solid parts of your body, the bones, the hair, the teeth, nails, skin, muscles, the organs, the ingested food, feces, all the solid parts of the body. These are the earth element within us. And then turn your attention to focus on the external earth elements. The cushion or chair you're sitting on, the floor, the ground below, the walls of the room you're in, the gompa or your house. We can expand our awareness out to our environment, roads, cars, trees, people, mountains, continents. Just expand, get a sense of experience of the vastness of the earth element on this earth. So internally, externally, the earth element. And we can investigate how these two are connected, the inner and the external earth element. For example, through the food we eat, the nutrients flowing, the food we eat, starting from the nutrients we get from when we're in the womb, the mother's placenta, the milk we drank when we were babies, the food we eat every day, and that how that rejoins the outer elements through excretion of feces, through getting a haircut and clipping our nails and shedding skin cells all the time that then form dust we have to clean up. And then when we die, the body returns to the earth element through, being buried, so through decomposition in the ground or through cremation. So then we can investigate which bit of this earth element is actually, you know, me, ultimately mine, given this flow of interdependence externally, internally, which bit is me? And then we can turn our attention to the water element in our body, which makes up a great proportion of our body. Everything that is wet, flowing, or the saliva, blood, sweat, mucus, urine, that we can directly experience. It's an obvious level of experience. You know, the tears in the eyes. But also at a more subtle level of the body, lymph, the fluid, oil in our joints, the cerebrospinal fluid, which might be hidden to our experience, but we can contemplate. We know it exists. And, you know, the actual makeup of the cells themselves, with the water fluid permeating, surrounding the cells, within the cells. You know, we have to use our imagination, use what we've seen on, microscopes and so forth, science shows. You can think of the water element outside of ourselves in the external environment, or the oceans and rivers and lakes and ponds, the rain, the clouds, snow, water, in other living things as well. So you can connect with the water element in our external environment, experience of humidity. And we can see how these inner water element and the external water element are connected through breathing, through sweating coming out through our pores, through urinating, through drinking, through eating. So which part of this water element is like inherently mine, me, separate, independent? And then reflecting on the fire element, or the energy, the main experience that we would have manifestly, consciously, is that of heat, of warmth in the body. So we can experience the heat in different parts of our body. Maybe some bits warmer than the others. At a more subtle level, there's the energy of the metabolism in our cells, in our guts, and so forth. Electricity flowing in the nervous system. And we can certainly feel the heat when we have something like a fever. And the external fire element through the heat in our temperature, don't have to mention. The energy present in our whole entire universe, the heat and light from the sun, powered by nuclear fusion, volcanoes, burning fossil fuels, electricity, but also the energy in our food. So contemplate this flow of heat and energy from the external world into ourselves through eating, through sitting in front of a fire, or the temperature under the sun. And then how heat is returned to the outside through radiating in our bodies, or warmth, with the breath out is warmer than the breath in, or through excretion. So again, we can see which part of this is me. There seems to be a constant flow, internal, external. Which part can I claim as being inherently mine? And the wind element, or the inner air element, is that mostly, primarily, that we would recognize the flow of the breath in and out at our nostrils, the air in our lungs, and the gases dissolved in our blood or that we emit from our body. The flow of the breath at a more subtle level, into all the cells and organs and so forth that we're not aware of. And thinking of the air element externally in our environment, the wind, the breezes we feel on our body, the atmosphere extending up to the sky. Get a sense of how these are connected internally, externally, our breathing, inhaling oxygen, exhaling carbon dioxide, releasing that. The air on our skin. And think the same process is happening for every living being. So even in this space, those of us here in the Gompa, that breathing in, exchanging that air, which bit of that air is mine or someone else's, a combination. And then the space element within the body, or the spaces like in the mouth cavity, the chest cavity, the windpipe, the lungs, stomach, intestines, skull. At a more subtle level, the space within cells and between cells, between atoms, within atoms. Again, we can only observe this through microscopes and so forth, or even more subtle microscopes that scientists have used. And the space outside of just extends everywhere. Everything that is not occupied by something else solid extends beyond our environment, outer space, unknown distances away, pervades everywhere, penetrates into all material objects. So where does that external space begin and my space end? Is the skin truly a boundary between inner and outer? I mean, even our skin is full of holes, all these pores, you know, which are breathing. Space within each of those pores. So which of this is mine, me, independent? And then the consciousness element is our knowing capacity that we're using in this meditation that makes us aware, makes us conscious. It's not one singular solid element. It's like a river of changing moments of conscious experience, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, imagining, remembering, creating, emoting, sleeping, dreaming, all sorts of stuff. So we can think just that each moment of consciousness is different from all these other physical elements. And yet it relies on them, particularly as we're going through this meditation, analysing the elements. So you can see how an experience of seeing relies on light, visual shape, colour, eye, and our conscious attention. Where does consciousness itself begin and end? Can we draw a boundary around that? And which of those moments of consciousness is me, truly mine? Get a sense of where can I be found amongst all these elements? Is there one I more identify with than others? Or do I get a sense I'm the sum part of that or something separate to that? Where exactly are we? Am I? Don't try and work it out in terms of logic and so forth. Just simply listen to your heart response. And whatever we've been able to contemplate, experience through this analysis, draw whatever conclusions and see, has it contributed to loosening up this solid, concrete, independent sense of myself as this sort of self-enclosed bubble rolling through life? I've got a different set of references for understanding how and where and if I exist. Not if I exist, we exist. Not that one. And then again, just turn your attention to the sensations of your breath, your touch with the seat, the cushion there on your skin, physical sensations of the breath. Okay, then relax. If you wish to move around, stretch and wriggle, stand up, sit down again, it's all fine. Okay, so we'll have some discussion now. So if you'd like to, again, get together with a few friends and just discuss how, any observations you had from that meditation, how that could be beneficial to investigate like this. And either this, you can use this one, you can use other analytical meditations, but it's helpful seeing we've just done this one to, it's fresh in our minds to at least start with that one. So if you get into groups, those of you online, I'm going to stop the recording and so that you can chat together. Hello. So let's just see what, if you want to encapsulate some of the parts of your discussion that would be helpful, observations for yourself or others, what you observed, what was helpful, what are helpful ways of thinking, did it change any ways of thinking, introduce new experiences?
Well, it was certainly helpful to have that as a guided meditation.
Helpful to have it as a guided meditation.
There's a lot to contemplate.
Yes. So each of the elements, you could just, even without being guided, could just take one, say, and say, oh, what's my sense of earth element? And you can investigate for yourself, and you could just take that one, say, or water or air, any one of them. And but yes, and you have that in your notes too, so it's there. I know it's a bit awkward unless you could do a recording of it and play it to yourself, but it's very helpful to be sort of guided through it, and then you don't have to don't have to think about it, but you do have to think about it because you're being guided what to think about. Yeah. Any other observations?
I think a few of us had the experience where, as we were guided through the different elements, the mind initially starts to wander, but then as it starts to break down different parts, the mind starts to question, what is the boundary of this body and the world?
Yeah, questioning what's the boundary of the body and the world as you're going through the meditation, which is part of the intent of that meditation, a large part of the intent of that, because we do have this sense of I'm separate, right? And this is me. I found for myself just even the thing of, oh, I'm leaving dead cells all the time. So even this definition of what I regard as the edge of my body isn't really so well defined. So even to think like that is, is quite mind-blowing. Yeah.
I have this thought in my head at the end that perhaps I'm nowhere and everywhere at the same time.
I'm nowhere and everywhere. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, that's too scary.
And then you thought, no, that's too scary. I'm nowhere and everywhere. Very profound. But we I get it, especially the everywhere part, I get.
Not necessarily where you want to be.
Not necessarily where you want to be all the time, but apparently we choose. But that's the hard stuff because analytical meditation is asking us to really take responsibility for our experience, our attitudes, our views, our reactions, and so forth, which is, and for transforming our mind. And it's tough, it's not easy. You know, we've got all these habitual ways of thinking and so forth, and even thinking about changing that can feel exhausting. You mean I've got to apply effort? Oh.
In the body is, in a way, it's almost like the rubber around all that stuff, isn't it? The concepts, the ideas, the attitudes that you carry forward.
Yes.
And we do identify so strongly with the body as being the self, the me.
We totally identify with the body as being the self, as being me. We spend a lot of time on the body and what we're projecting out towards others as well as the me. We're not sort of conscious that, oh, I'm projecting this. So it's how we perceive ourselves and how I want to, you know, project that in the world. Anything else? Anyone online wanted to share some observations? Share part of your discussion? If you do, you have to unmute. No? All good, I guess. Anyone else?
It's just interesting what Yvonne said. I think this
Yeah.
once, how sometimes when you're meditating or something, you do get these thoughts that crash through your normal way of thinking about things that are a bit maybe some scary.
I guess,
They don't fit with your normal
yes,
sort of
having,
way things are,
yeah.
for you.
Yeah, having the thought that in meditation that you have experiences or thoughts or reflections that don't fit with your normal way of thinking. I'd say all of the Buddhist teachings challenges us to do that, to blow our minds in a way, to really, well, to free up our minds and to make our minds more spacious and more open to different perspectives and different ways of seeing, different ways of experiencing, not boxing ourselves in or not boxing our opinions in or attitudes in and so forth. It challenges all of those, which can press all our buttons, isn't it? So, ooh.
So you arrive somewhere you don't expect to. You left on the element meditation train and arrive somewhere else, you know?
Yeah.
Just what I mean.
Well,
it's very interesting.
It is very interesting because I guess meditating on the elements, for example, is a tool to allow those experiences to happen. And yeah, so also, you know, when we come to the death time, when we're going to leave the body, then we do have, you know, the experience of the dissolution of these elements. You know, earth dissolves and water dissolves, the fire element dissolves, the air element dissolves. And we can familiarize with that process. That comes up in a future module. We can familiarize with that process. So we're not fearful of that too. If I've predominantly got a sense of corporality or even being, because I've identified myself with the body based on the earth element, and that starts to shrink. You know, you see people getting smaller and shrinking and eating less and so forth, the body getting weaker and so forth. Then where's my sense of self gone? You know, so it's you know, by familiarizing with this, we can say, oh, I can not have to rely on that being my sense of self or myself being independent or, you know, what's out there and so forth. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No? All right. All right. So that's one to play with, investigate. Play is a good way to approach it, to take these meditations with the spaciousness, lightness, and then we're more encouraged to continue on and to do more. All right. Okay, so one thing I just also wanted to touch on in relation to analytical meditation is that, well, as we've been discussing, all our experiences in life really depend on the way we construe the world, the way we think, how we feel about things. And when we look at getting frustrated or so forth with different situations, it's because we're not in sync with reality. It's because we're looking for the solutions out there. But also we can have a tendency to focus on our own shortcomings. And I think this can become a danger when we come into the Dharma and it's, you know, all about, oh, we've all got wrong views, we have to correct our wrong views, and all sounds a bit bleak and negative and so forth. So it can tap into, you know, our own already there a low self-esteem or self-criticism, self-judgment can hamper that further investigation. So this is not what it's about. In fact, you know, there's so much more, you know, in terms of our self-image, to enhance our self-image, to realize we emphasize, you know, again and again, appreciating what we have as not just a human rebirth, but having the interest in the Dharma and appreciating, you know, having a functioning mind, having a functioning body, being able to investigate, having like-minded others and so forth and so forth. But also the fact that all our positive qualities are innate to us. You know, the negative ones are not innate. And so just like when the Dalai Lama met with all these big scientists and one talked about low self-esteem and they couldn't find, the translator couldn't find the Tibetan translation. There wasn't a Tibetan translation for low self-esteem. And when His Holiness finally got what they were talking about, it's like, why would human beings do this to yourself? And we don't think like that, do we? That I'm doing this to myself. I'm creating that low self-esteem. We think it's, you know, I don't know what we think it is. We don't think. We don't think. That's the whole purpose. Thank you. Thanks, Nat. That's simple. We don't think. No, that's the whole purpose of our analytical meditation, is to think, you know, and to really unlock our potential for happiness, for satisfaction that each and every one of us have, you know, but becoming more aware of our mental process and applying this laser-like discriminating wisdom, this sort of Manjushri, you know, to all our actions, everything that we think, do and say, basically. Maybe not everything, you know. But to, you know, that way we gain a more realistic sense of who we are. We get a more realistic sense of what we're capable of, which is, I don't know if we get a realistic sense of that, because what we're capable of is beyond our wildest dream, beyond our imagination. I guess we can be fortunate that we have guides like, you know, His Holiness Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, all our precious gurus who show what is possible, you know, that it is possible, just like the Buddha showed, you know. So accepting all our positive traits is really, really necessary. Yes, we accept our negative ones and we're really focused on those. But we also determined to nourish the good aspects of ourselves, the beneficial, and we have to know what's beneficial, what's helpful, what are the good qualities and so forth, which are, you know, give us power, so that eventually we recognize, not just we say, you know, how fortunate we are to be born human and appreciate our human existence, but we really have a confidence in that and therefore build our capacity. And we gain that through, you know, doing more and more analytical meditation. You know, look at ourselves deeply. And then we can also see that, putting into perspective, most of the things that you know, my day-to-day problems that, you know, I build up and elaborate, and that's where my mind gets it wrong. And I make it overwhelming. Actually, if I look at it in perspective, I find it really, really helpful to look at, well, what's happening in the world, you know, and look at perspective of, you know, the whole COVID situation or the war situation or so forth, and going, you know what, my problems that I think are so central because it's my problem, so that's my world that I've created. As Lama Yeshe said, we all create our own universes, our own experience, but really in the greater perspective of things. And that's something like that meditation can do, is realize, oh, there's a greater perspective, even just thinking about the elements, you know, it's endless. It's endless, especially when you get to something like space, you know. And so putting things more in a, you know, realistic perspective, and then also using analytical meditation, of course, to apply purification practices and so forth that, you know, that do act as antidotes to the negative states, the destructive emotions and things that are causing us all these problems in the first place. And, you know, hopefully then we have some great enthusiasm for engaging more in our spiritual practice, for, you know, investigating more and more. As I said, you know, when we go through the Lam Rim, the path to enlightenment, you know, going step by step, knowing exactly, just like being guided through this meditation, what is it that I have to focus on? What are the points I'm discussing? And within those points, you can bring all the examples from your own experience and make it your personal journey, because all of our spiritual journey is a personal journey, you know. Yes, there's the structure outlined very nicely, which is very nice. Thank you very much, Buddha. And Lama Atisha and Lama Tsongkhapa and so forth for making it so accessible to us. But then, you know, it's us for us to bring our own experience to that, and then deepening and deepening and deepening that experience, knowing that we can gain greater wisdom through doing that. I like that it's like the wisdom of study, wisdom of reflection and discussing and so forth, getting different perspectives. I mean, that's the great power of discussing with each other. We all experience things differently. We shine different lights. We use different words. We use different examples and so forth. And that enriches each and every one of our experience. And then, you know, meditate. And then you find each time you meditate, as I said, you know, you meditate on impermanence day after day after day. And then you take that into your experience every day and just observe impermanence around you. Like I remember doing that on the bus on the way to work in Sydney. In 100 years, that'll be gone. 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 And that was 100 years. You know? Some of those things are already gone. It's not 100 years. It was a very short time. But, you know, we can start just imbuing our mind with that idea of not grasping at things staying in place exactly as we want, which then causes us problems because we don't like change. And it was the first teaching of the Buddha, everything's subject to change. You know? That can free our mind, free our experiences. And then maybe not boxing in the other person, you know, that person that we've got a certain idea about, that's how they are. And then we can't let in when they act differently. And we know we've experienced that ourselves. They always seem like that. I mean, I think, you know, to some extent, of course, you know, parents always see us as that child. You're just like, well, we probably always see them as that parent as well. So it works both ways. All right, so we'll leave it there for today. Thanks, everybody. This will go back out in the folder for Discovering Buddhas. And we'll dedicate all our practice here, all our discussion, all our reflections. Page 16 Through the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the precious body mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good week. Thank you to everybody online. See you next time. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.